Today is May 13th, 2021. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Hoki. Nagana go meko che stokom aki. Hi, my name is Red Thunder Woman. My English married name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and her pronouns. Native Calgarian is being recorded on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the opposed US-Canadian border are the Blackfeet. North of the border are the Siksika, Gunai, and Bogani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed on September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Wesley, Chiniki, Bears Pond Nations of the Stoney, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and the members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name. I was born here in Calgary, or in Blackfoot. Mokinstis has Michelle Elliott, another English name, which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene. My Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellow Knives Dene. My father is so Canadian. I'm a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution, while having an Indian Act and Post status card. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Hare people, also called the Great Bear Lake people in Treaty 11. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene Nation is a visitor to this area of Clincho Tine Indahe, meaning many horse town, named after the Calgary Stampede. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and honoring your role as a treaty partner. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Any mistakes or misinterpretations will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous, but I share what I know as I walk down my Red Road. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to my previous donors for already showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I also have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe, and you can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. So today I'm quite lucky to have a friend of mine come join me. We actually met on Twitter. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. So my name's Reio Lance. I currently reside in Calgary, Alberta, and I also just recently got a hold of my bachelor's. I just received that in the mail actually the other day, and I'm actually going to be working on going into my master's later this year as well. And I also want to thank the Blackfoot as well for being here today and being a settlement on their territory. For me, actually, my Indigenous heritage is actually in Ontario. I'm from the Algonquin Greater Golden Lake area, which is actually about an hour and a half east from Ottawa. And my Indigenous heritage also comes from my father's side of the family. And then my mom's side of the family is very Canadian, and they actually came from Europe. So that's me in a nutshell.
Right on. And one of the things that you post on Twitter is that you're going to be running for public office. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have decided since 2019 that I would like to run as an independent candidate on a provincial level here in Alberta. For me, my journey was a little bit different because I honestly felt a lot of times that my voice as a citizen wasn't being taken serious, whether it was me writing emails to MLAs or MPs on a federal level. And I felt that I wanted to make more of a difference. And I feel also too, as an Indigenous person, that sometimes we're not taken as seriously on a lot of different topics. And we constantly have to continue to raise our voices more than other people may have to, especially when wanting to run in politics. For me too, I honestly never thought I would get to this position of wanting to run as an independent. I honestly thought when I was starting my research that I would just land into a role of joining a party. And that's why I did do some research on some parties here in Alberta that I thought would line up to who I believe myself as a person and what my beliefs are. But I guess the more and more research I did and the more I realized who I was as a person, I felt that maybe independent just felt more right for me, rather than joining a party and being a party candidate.
Well, that's awesome. So what are some of the parties that you looked into and what was kind of the deal breaker for you? And I ask, but not wanting to put you on the spot, in the same breath, I would probably agree with you. So know that I'm probably just going to be sitting here going, uh-huh,
Okay.
yep,
um,
yep.
well, for me, I thought about joining actually the Alberta NDP and the Alberta Liberals. Um, and actually even a small part of me wanted to even join the Alberta Greens. I think for the Alberta Greens, the thing is for me is that I do believe in having clean energy and I do believe in a cleaner earth. I do believe that climate change is an issue, not just here in Alberta, not even just in Canada, but around the whole world. But I think that when it came to them, especially, I think that they don't really spend a lot of time on Indigenous issues. And I've actually seen some posts of things that kind of suggest that they don't go in that direction sometimes, at least the Alberta Greens anyways. I don't know about the federal Greens as much because again, like I said, my journey was more for provincial politics. Um, I think the Alberta Liberals actually line up with a lot of who I am, but I think there's just the idea is like, for example, I know the Alberta Liberals, which you are a member of that party. One of the things that you guys really are supportive on is bringing a PST here in Alberta. And not that I'm saying that it's a bad idea. It's just, I think in a lot of ways, Alberta sort of already has a PST. It's just more hidden. And I think that if we were able to more or less budget our money properly, which I know the UCP is showing us a lot different lately, but I think if we were able to budget our money more, we may not need to have more taxes. And I think this works on a government level, on any level, whether it's provincial or federal. I think you know, a lot of these taxes that we bring in for people, I always wonder, I'm like, is there another way though? Like, are we spending the money the correct way? And if we aren't, maybe that's why we need all these taxes. And I think for the Alberta NDP, I think it's more just the people that I had interacted with that sort of pushed me away from it. And again, I know that some of these people are not actual members of the NDP, but they are more or less supporters, and they're more or less people who really advocate the party. I think the attitude and the energy I got from a lot of them is what really sort of turned me away from them, because I guess I didn't feel as welcomed. Like I said, honestly, of all the parties, you guys, the Alberta Liberals, have actually been the most open-minded with me being an independent. And so I think that's why I kind of lean with you guys, but I definitely am not going to say I consider myself a full Alberta Liberal, and that's sort of why I'm in the independent role that I'm in.
Oh no, that sounds good. That's exactly what I was wondering about was you know, where you fit. And pray tell me why the Conservatives, so the UCP, don't seem to align with you.
Well, obviously, I think being a member of the LGBTQ community, being an openly gay queer male, I think that, you know, that's something that the UCP and Conservative government doesn't really, they don't talk a lot about it, or they don't want to touch it. And I just think that no matter what party we are, we should be open-minded to everybody, regardless of who they are. And so, in my opinion, and especially, I mean, we've all seen it. There's videos out there like of Jason Kenney, the comments that he's made about the LGBTQ community. And just in my opinion, if that's the type of leader that party has, that's not something I can see myself getting behind.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally understand that. I think sometimes it's just better for other people to hear it from other people than just me.
Yeah.
In fact, I annoy the hell out of myself, so I'm really grateful to have you on here to say it. And today, as we're recording, there's a very interesting development in the UCP caucus. Their chair actually resigned from their position as caucus chair and publicly denounced Jason Kenney and asked him to step down from being premier. So
Oh,
yeah, oh yeah, it's been a fun day on Twitter and a fun day on the CBC radio listening to blowhards give their crappy opinions about what they think is going on. And I, at the end of the day, I can say what I want about them, but they rule, and
yeah,
that's the majority of the voters are. Pro killing Indigenous people, pro killing LGBTQ2 plus, anti-progressiveness. They say the most awful, heinous things.
yeah,
Anti-science, so pro-pandemic genocide. Like I can't say enough awful things about my neighbors apparently
yeah,
and how they feel about who we should be electing to government. So
yeah,
yeah, so it is it's really great to have somebody else on the show and talk about Alberta from their point of view, because I've been pretty open about my opinion. I think that most folks just enable genocide against Indigenous people, against LGBTQ2 plus, and are so pro-Christian that they're okay with the genocide of other people's cultures and such. So it's fun times if
yeah.
you're an Indigenous woman or an Indigenous gay man in Alberta right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, and even the other parties, like I don't want to throw just the UCP under the bus. Obviously, the Green Party fella in my area was so racist towards me. I felt like I had to run against him. I'm actually to the point though, I don't know how I feel about running ever, and I don't know how I feel about voting ever.
yeah,
Any energy I have will be put towards folks like yourself or Marilyn North Pagan, or like my actual friends who are interested in running. I just, I really I've lost faith with
yeah,
humanity. I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm supposed to be, helping other people, but it's really clear that, all of the barriers are set up there. I mean, I can't even share a survey about missing and murdered Indigenous women and have people retweet it. So it's interesting. Like there's a piece of me that wonders, like, do I just block everybody that's following me? Like, how do I make it? How do I get this information out there? Right. Like,
yeah,
because it's obvious that the algorithms of social media just doesn't allow it. So I don't even know how to exist. Really, you can report to I just got off a 24-hour suspension for showing the hate mail and the hate comments that I
right,
get, which is so
right.
it's just like I don't even know how to exist. And this particular day, there's a trailer that came out of New York, misrepresenting Inuk voices, and there's an article going around about how to hook up with a Native American man, and
Wow.
they're so awful that it's not even funny satire at this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
know?
agree. I
Like
agree.
it's just the representation that we get is so awful. So I'm really grateful for this podcast, because otherwise we'd have no voice whatsoever. And I really want to encourage you to what riding are you, or constituency are you riding if you're going
Um,
MLA?
so Calgary Fish Creek.
Okay, so if you live basically in the southwest part, used to be represented by Harper federally. Right now would be what, that Cousy? I think that's their
I think,
area, but that's federal. So
yeah.
provincially, is that Kenny's riding? I don't remember.
Yeah, it is. I think his name's Richard. I don't know his last name off the top of
Okay.
the head, but yeah, it is UCP. It's a very, I'll be honest, it's a very UCP / Wild Rose rich riding is what I call it, because those are usually the parties that have, or progressive conservative, that have won that riding since I believe 1979. At least that's the data that I have off the top of my head. It could even be longer than that. And I know that the last independent candidate to run was in 1993. So me running will end a very long independent drought, as I call it. But I think for me too, when it comes to that, running up against a very conservative riding, I think it's just about, and this is why I think the perks of being independent sometimes is that you can sort of be transparent and be more what your constituents want. So if you have to change a little bit per se of who you are in order to get your message across, then so be it. I know that, I mean, I grew up in that riding. I actually, when we moved to Alberta when I was 9, that was where we ended up moving to, and my parents still reside in that riding. And I have a lot of friends, and I've networked a lot in that riding. So I mean, people know who I am, and that, I think that's an advantage of its own, really.
I my step family actually lives on Braeside, so I remember when that was the edge of town, Braeside.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so it's funny to me when you talk about the historical leanings, because it's like, you know, that was actually prairie not that long ago. I don't think people who are not from Calgary understand how new of a city this place is and how like pro-colonialism it is. So like this place is just a land developer and realtors, you know, wet dream, because they just get to keep going because nobody cares about limits. As long as Indigenous people are dead, they don't mind, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
they can die all over the streets, that's fine. And it's not okay. Obviously, ran when I ran municipally and provincially, I cared a lot about harm reduction, systemic racism, policies to change those things, still active in trying to, it's such the lowest hanging fruit is no Langevin school. And I can't believe the fight to get these racists to just change the stupid thing. I cannot, like, like they don't even have a clue what truth and reconciliation is, let alone freaking systemic racism. So
Yeah.
I don't know how to fight this fight, but hats off to you for wanting to put your name in. And not every party is so guilty of this. Like I can't even, it's taken years and years. And you know, the irony is even in the Liberal Party, most of them just resent me because I have the audacity. You know,
Yeah.
stupid Native woman should be quiet in the corner, not being honest and open. And you know, obviously I don't feel that way. I'm actually shocked. I actually thought higher of, you know, the parties, um, governance. I thought higher of my neighbors, but I just took pictures of this sign that's up on the corner here, and you know, I don't know if you remember the coup d'etat guy, but he actually lives, like, he's one of my neighbors,
Oh.
and yeah, yeah. So we had a by-election, and I wasn't running in that one actually, and the coup d'etat guy ran here in Greenway. At the time it was called Greenway.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we have all of the interesting folks that you can possibly have in this area. And you know, like the moderators to like the community association block me, you know, the fun stuff like, oh, what's happening in Abbeydale, like it's literally the mods that are perpetuating the worst racism. So it's no wonder Colton Crowshoe could be you know, missing and then murdered here in Abbeydale. And you know, we actually had police surround us when we had the vigil.
Oh,
So
wow.
they wouldn't even open up the community center to us. So like that's how bad my neighbors are, actually. They're so
Okay.
racist, you know, and I know your neighbors are no different, actually.
Yeah.
So that's not the fun part about this. And there's not like a fun place to move to that makes you safe, because it's just such acceptable racism here in Alberta, and well, in Canada and North America,
Yeah.
now globally, you know, it's just global racism. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answers are, but I know it's important to run to have a platform. I'm not in the I'm really unstable right now, unstable from the pandemic. So
Yeah.
as a result, I can't run provincially, federally, nothing. And frankly, I don't think the parties like what I have to say,
Yeah.
because obviously they're pro Canada, pro colonialism,
Yeah.
right? So they're, you know, for killing Palestinians and they're for killing Indigenous people. And as soon as you're a part of these systems, you're complicit, which I am, obviously, because I'm a federal liberal and a provincial liberal.
Yeah,
And join these parties thinking you could make some substantial changes and win some hearts and minds, but you can't even change management school, for Christ's sakes.
I know.
So
That's
yeah, yeah. So that's
horrible.
kind of where we're at. Trying to get Narcan in bulk. That's a federal issue, jurisdiction issue, and I can't get that either. So it's that racial battle fatigue of daily going to my pharmacist and getting another a Narcan and then distributing it to either Bear Clan or, Be the Change YYC, and
Yeah,
trying to get, the Narcan in the hands of the right people in the
yeah,
hopes that we can save some lives. But no, Canada's just cool with genocide. So I don't know how to really like tackle this anymore, because the other part is that all the Christian organizations have made money and continue to make money as nonprofits to
mhm,
exploit the trauma that they literally impose on our own people.
yeah,
And and they get away with it, and people vote for this. They actually think that it's positive. We
yeah,
have human trafficking money that goes where? How is it for someone like myself who's literally on the streets, giving Narcan to people?
yeah,
How is it that, we can't seem to get any of that funding unless we have a nice white savior that's our CEO or our,
yeah,
executive director? Like the entire system is messed up. And well, it's by design, obviously. That's the intention.
yeah.
So what are your stances on healthcare, since that seems to be such a huge deal here in Alberta?
I mean, healthcare, I think healthcare is really important. I mean, actually, before I dive into it, I just wanted to say too, something you had said. I think that's another reason too why I'm where I'm at too, because of kind of giving up on humanity as a whole, and just the responses that people think is acceptable here in Alberta, and like you said, in Canada and globally. But definitely when it comes to healthcare, I mean, that's a huge one. I mean, I think what the UCP did by laying off all those front line workers during the global pandemic was completely wrong. I think more funding does need to go to the healthcare here in Alberta, because I mean, like I said, we're in a global pandemic, so it's almost like shooting somebody down when we're already in a horrible situation as it is. And I know for a fact that we have the money to give to the healthcare workers and into the health industry. So my thing is that why are we supporting all these rich corporations, which the UCP that 4.7 billion handout that they were giving out to all those corporations, and I get it, it's because those are our supporters for the UCP, but I mean, like for me personally, I mean, I know being an independent, making a budget is a little bit different because I'm not necessarily part of a party. But I know for me, if I had the say on that, I mean, a lot of that 4.7 billion could go towards a lot of things, and healthcare is one of them. So it makes you really sad to see that we're, and hindering that industry, and even hearing people losing their doctors, and their doctors are moving to other provinces or even other countries. Um, it's really sad. That's not how we should be running this pandemic.
Oh no, when we knew federally, like federally, his record was anti-science and pro-industry. But I don't understand, like, for a guy who seems to care so much about the economy, why it is that they aren't focused on keeping their workers alive. One,
Yeah,
because they don't just work and create the economy, but they also vote for them. So that bigger picture of brainwashing your people to believe that it's okay to die in a pandemic. Like I don't understand this world we live in right now at
I
all.
know. I don't either.
Yeah. So and you, yeah, I mean, I do want you to talk about some of the things that you want to address. So, we can definitely go in that direction too.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I can just go over some of the things that are in my platform. I mean, there's a few, but like quite a few, but we can just go over some, and maybe if you want to talk about any of those are fine. I'll just list what I have here in my notes, and then if you want, we can dive into some of them separately. So for me, obviously, Indigenous rights is one of the things that would really want to push if I'm elected. Um, for obvious reasons, we've had those conversations. But women's rights, LGBTQ2 plus community rights, ending homelessness, and that's why I do really talk with Chaz and Be the Change YYC, for example. Then obviously disability and deaf community. I've talked to some folks that feel that there's no party that I feel that some parties do say they're going to do stuff for that community, but I feel that it's more just like one fancy sentence or two fancy sentences, and then when they're elected, they don't really do anything for them. So I think that's a big one here in Alberta. Senior and veteran rights, I think this is a huge one, not just on a provincial level, but like a national level too. I think the way that our veterans are treated, for example, is really crazy, considering that they go serve our country and then they come back and they basically get a slap on the hand. I don't understand that. And then of course our seniors, I mean, they're the ones that built this province and built this country. So why are we neglecting them when they reach a certain age? Another big one, which I know some people have mixed feelings on, because they had mixed feelings on minimum wage being at 15, but I really think we need to increase minimum wage anywhere from $20 to $22 an hour. And this just reflects the inflation and everything that's going on in general. Increasing AISH payments, that's a big one for me. I have actually a couple of people on my team who are on AISH, and this is an issue that has they have brought up to me, and even speaking to other people in general. I've got friends on AISH, and they just think the amount of money that they get on AISH is never enough to survive on. I literally don't know how they do it. I actually tried to live on an AISH wage for I think it was almost 6 months, like me and my husband living on it, and it was just, I don't know how they do it. I know that one of the NDPs, I think Maria, she did it for a month, but I wanted to go a step further, and that's why I did about 6 months. And I don't know how they do it, like especially if they have medications and other things that they need to survive on their day to day. Another big one is keeping Alberta air clean, renewable energy while supporting the oil workers. I mean, I've got family members who are in the oil and gas industry, but at the same time, I also do believe in a cleaner Alberta as well. And that's kind of where, in that aspect, I kind of line up with the Greens. And then really just being active with future generations, getting the youth involved. I know that the parties do get the youth involved as it is, but I think even as an independent, it's not a bad thing to get the youth involved, because I think these are our future doctors, our future politicians, our future teachers, and so on. So getting them involved in the community is really important. And personally, I think even lowering voting age to 16 would be kind of ideal too, because I do believe that a lot of youth in high school, usually have a strong concept of how politics work, and they have a strong voice, but of course they're not 18, so they can't vote. So, having some younger votes might give us a different type of government. And then obviously as an independent, working for the people is another big one for me too, because not having a party behind me or a party leader behind me, I have to do everything kind of, I say, winging it and doing it myself. So working for the people and listening to them and actually doing surveys with them. And that's kind of what I do now too, is I do reach out to constituents and do phone surveys currently with the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I was, going to people's doors and finding out different things that, affected them as a whole. For the most part, there's always been a majority when asking them different issues. The only issue that my writing is literally, it was 50-50, exactly 50-50, was climate change. So 50% believe in it and 50% don't. So I thought that was kind of interesting on that level. That is something I kind of stand for, but seeing that my constituents are divided sort of makes me kind of wonder which direction I should go, because like I said, all the other surveys I've done, I've had, a very clear message, 60% supported or 70%. I'm like, oh, that's enough in my opinion that, okay, they want me to do this. And then, working across party lines, I think is the thing. I think a lot of people, when they think independent, they think it means somebody who is going in it on alone. Whereas I think I'm very opposite of that. I think, I want to work across party lines and see what the parties have to offer, and see if anything, and because again, some of the things I do stand for do align with other parties. So getting active with those people and having those conversations, but also kind of moving past the party lines too is a big one for me, and getting down to business and dealing with the policies and the issues that affect Albertans is really big for me, because I think if we just sort of continue to do the us versus them mentality and point fingers at each party, it's not helping Albertans, you know. And I see that a lot now with the NDP and UCP. I mean, having only two parties in our government right now really does have the us versus them. I think we definitely need, you know, a third party or a third voice in there, so that, because right now we're getting from the parties is the NDP is only going to tell us what the UCP is doing and vice versa. So having a third or fourth party or voice in there, you know, we're going to see more sides of what's really going on.
Here I am muted. My own show. No, I love what you're saying. No, I think it's amazing, and I wish the citizens of Alberta felt the same way you do,
I
and
know.
we had more constructive dialogue in our parliament. So, or I guess our legislature in this case. Yeah. So I guess for me, I'm wondering, what kind of relationship do you have with your MLA right now?
Well, so I don't currently live in the riding that I'm running. So I actually have a different MLA. I have Whitney Isaac, actually. My relationship with her is non-existing, because I have sent her emails in the past about different issues that I've had, and I just get the generic one sentence response from her. Now, to the point I've sent her so many emails that she's blocked me. So I don't have any contact with her whatsoever. And that's sort of why I've reached out to, I've tried to reach out to other UC MLAs and even NDP MLAs. And for the most part, like I said, I don't know what it is, but I always seem to just get the generic one sentence from most MLAs. And again, it's not just a UCP thing, it's even the NDP. Now, I don't know if it's because most of these individuals know that I'm planning to run as an independent, and they just really don't want to have those conversations. So it makes it kind of a little bit sad to me, because as I was saying in my platform, one of the things for me is to work across party lines. So I really don't understand why right now these MLAs don't want to have those conversations. And that's why, and I said at the beginning of this, the Alberta Liberals are the only party that I mean, you guys don't have any MLAs elected, but your candidates are the only ones that seem to want to sit down and have these conversations. And again, you, especially the Indigenous conversation, I mean, I get a lot of that from you. I don't see a lot of Indigenous conversations with the current MLAs and even other candidates in general.
Yeah, no, they don't touch our issues with a 10-foot pole. And that's the unfortunate part, right? Is that they understand, I think, that they're complicit in colonialism, so that's why they don't even want to touch it. And I think that's sadly where we're at as you know. And
Yeah.
I honestly believe that the moment you out yourself as Indigenous is the moment they feel very easily compelled to ignore you and your emails and such. So to me, I actually have Jason Kenney's team blocked me from being
Yeah.
able to have respectful dialogue. So I just have them all blocked from me and my social media, and I won't engage with them in any capacity, because they are, they're fascist.
Yeah.
There's no nice way to say it. They're just fascist. And the fact that people are so daft about what fascism actually is, like it's really sad, because I mean, most of us had, great grandparents that somehow served in World War II, and yet here we are, basically voting for fascism
Mhm.
and allowing things like Nazi flags to be, up right now. So, it's just a reflection of our populace at this point that, if you can be a Nazi supporter, then you can get elected in Alberta. It's really that simple. And the irony is a lot of so-called progressives and centrists, they don't even think they fall in that category, but yet they do, because they enable this behavior, and they still amplify the voices of, like, on the CBC today at noon, they had some old PCer who's like, well, when I was part of Ralph's team, and I'm like, you, do you have any idea how this does not matter to the majority of the people? Like, at all, at all.
Yeah.
We just don't care. And then, you have like the NDPs that think that they're progressive, but they're the first ones to be like, fuck indigenous bodies, like build that pipe, woohoo, build that pipe, let's
Yep.
kill those natives. Like
Yeah.
they're just so, who cares?
Yep.
So, and then the centrists, they're like, well, I see both sides. I wonder how many centrists regret those words after Hitler killed 6 million people.
Hmm.
So I cannot wrap my head around how daft people are, not just to vote these people in, but to actually say these things out loud.
Yeah.
Like I can't wrap my head around it at all. So here we are, and I wish you a ton of luck trying to deal with these
Yeah.
folks. That's for sure. I just don't. They just don't care.
Yeah.
All they care about is power and being in power, and they
Yeah.
don't actually care about the people. So, and that, I think that's so reflective in everything that we've seen when it comes to, the amount of people who are racialized that died, the amount of seniors that have died through this pandemic, and the zero care to make any systemic changes. And in fact, the person who's leading this call for Kenny to step down, like he's really wild rose. Like he's like a total fringe extremist where he's like, no masks, no government intervention. I care about the economy, but I don't care about dead workers.
Yeah.
Like I cannot wrap my head around the level of dialogue. So I don't even know. When I wasn't elected either provincially or municipally, there was a lot more reflection from my point of view of these people are so toxic. Could you really work with them?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, I don't think I could. I don't know if I could work with them because they are so toxic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do hope that if you do run, that you have really strong spiritual boundaries and really strong emotional boundaries, because there's no way that people who advocate for genocide proudly with like build that pipe, type of
Yeah.
chanting,
Yeah.
I don't even know how you work alongside them. And for half of what Kenny has said and done, I can't understand how anybody respects that man. But then he has a whole caucus of followers that are just like, whatever you say, sir, whatever you say. So I don't know how we're going to ever get out of this, other than we have a populace that has to die and be really negatively impacted. And then they've done a good enough job in our curriculum for people to be so stupid that they actually think that this is somehow Trudeau's fault,
Yeah.
when he was the one who's given us, like, honestly, if it wasn't for Justin Trudeau's policies that we did not vote on in convention because we did not expect a global pandemic to happen,
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
CERB and all of the incentives for business and such, like all of that money that has been available to industry and to the people, there's no, if he would have been not elected, I can't imagine where we would be. Just myself, my own family, you know um we were really negatively impacted by
Yeah.
the oil and gas industry and the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. How about you? How did your family go through, or how is your situation in general from the pandemic, from before the pandemic to now?
Um, I mean, I think that, before the pandemic, I think I was probably really closed off, like blinded to certain things that were going on. I can definitely admit that. And then during this pandemic, I've really seen a whole new side of Calgarians, Albertans, and even Canadians as a whole. It's interesting for me to like when it comes to political parties. I mean, I have family members who support all parties, so it's interesting for me. Like a lot of people usually say, like they have family members who, like when I'm talking family, I'm talking even aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff. But most people usually can say, their family for the most part votes the same way. But I've got family all over this country, so they all vote for each of the different parties. And I even have had in-laws that were very supportive of the UCP and have been really supportive of what Jason Kenney and his government was doing. And only just probably in the last little while has those individuals actually came forward and said, yeah, maybe, voting the UCP was the wrong choice. But I just don't, in my head and heart, I don't understand why it's taken this long for those individuals to see it, because I mean, we've been seeing what Kenney's government's been doing from day one. You know, everything I knew when he was elected, everything that he had promised Albertans was not going to come true. It's almost like he just was trying to get, you know, voted in and get his party voted in, and then after that it was like, okay, we're going to just ignore people. Because I've even had conversations with people who tell me that, you know, they've reached out to MLA, like UCP MLAs, and they have been told that by those UCP MLAs that, oh, you're not in my riding, so I don't want to talk to you. And I just think hearing those conversations is just really wrong, because I know for me, and I've said it on Twitter, I've said it online, and I've, you know, had it in conversations with people, is that if I am elected, and even if I'm not in your riding, I'm willing to talk to you and have those conversations, because I think we need to have MLAs that are more willing to talk to all Albertans and see, like on a provincial level, of course, talking to all Albertans and seeing what issues matter to them. Yes, at the end.
Well, the bar is low enough now that by giving a 2-sentence reply, you've done better than your predecessor.
Yeah, sure enough.
That's how low the bar is, really, right? Like the only time I met with my MLA, I literally was giving him free Indigenous education, because that's where it is. So I'm represented by Peter Singh. He was the one whose campaign office was raided by the RCMP the Friday before the election, and he still won overwhelmingly. And yeah, he knows absolutely nothing about Indigenous issues, like beyond, like minus. He has the all the myths and stereotypes. So.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think, you know, like we do have a long way to go. I mean, I had a conversation with some people about this yesterday, even I kind of just asked people in general. I asked my husband, I asked, you know, a couple of good friends. I said, do you guys honestly think that Indigenous people will ever actually have equal rights? Because I mean, the more and more I look around, the more I realize that, you know, it's just getting worse and worse. You know, even like you said, I mean, I even was on Twitter earlier today and I saw one of the posts about the Nazi flag being posted. I don't know where it was posted, but it was obviously somewhere in Alberta. But, you know, just seeing that, I'll be open and say this. I have family who actually, going back in history, was connected to Hitler at one point. And so for me, I do not support anything when I see these Nazi flags, and you know, when I see people drawing the symbols on benches and stuff, it horrifies me.
As a member of the LGBTQ2 plus community, you're the first one to get a pink triangle and gassed in this, gassed. Like I don't understand how people don't know this.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so that's why, you know, I understand and respect that maybe it's part of my history, but at the same time, I'm learning that that's not the ever direction I want to ever be in, or it's not the direction I ever want my family to ever be in. You know, it sucks that that's part of my heritage, unfortunately, but you know, I think the best thing, and somebody told me this, is the best thing to do is really just learn from this stuff, you know, and especially like you said, as a LGBTQ member, and even as an Indigenous member, I mean, speaking up about this stuff is important for all of us as a whole. And that's kind of why I think, you know, what comes back to me, you know, running as independent, is I hope I can be that voice for both of those communities. You know, firsthand, I see racism with my husband. I mean, I'm a white seeing Indigenous person, so I guess I can say I have that privilege, but, you know, my husband doesn't. I mean, he got followed in Walmart, you know, this like last month for buying razors. They actually even followed him, and when he went to the checkout, they radioed each other. Oh, did that man pay for those razors? I mean, I wasn't with him when that had happened. He had told me. But even going in certain stores, we get followed. If we buy something from another store and we go into certain stores, such as Shoppers and London Drugs, I have no problem saying it. If my husband is carrying the bags, we will be followed 9 times out of 10. If I'm carrying the bags, we will not be followed once. So these might be like small issues, but this is just an example of how I know this is such a big problem, and it hurts my heart that this is still something that is still going on even now. And that's why I had that conversation yesterday, is when will Indigenous people have the equal rights, and it's just sad that I even have to have those conversations, because that's kind of where I am when it comes to that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if we ever will. And I know it won't be in my lifetime. That's for
Yeah,
sure. And I would love to be proven wrong.
yeah,
100%. And that and I've been that's what I've been dealing with the pandemic, is mourning the loss that we can make enough change to have equality. It's been really hard, actually. I'm not gonna lie, because I question, was having kids right? you know,
yeah,
to
yeah.
bring them into a shit show of a environment like this, actually. So I've actually really had to dig deep into my trauma and go, obviously I want my daughter to thrive. So how do we teach her how to thrive in a society that hates her? They hate she's native, they hate she's queer, they hate that she's femme, in any capacity. So, now to try to navigate a world for her so that she can thrive. Obviously, employment is almost impossible because, of racism and sexism and homophobia. So, having her to be a strong, independent entrepreneur in some capacity so that she can thrive. That's obviously what the goal will be. And yeah, so do you have any kids?
No, but speaking of that topic, I mean, my husband and I do want to adopt one day. I'm actually really thinking of adopting in the Indigenous community when it comes to that time frame. But I totally agree too with that. Is you know when, like, for me, I know I've always wanted to be a father, but now I'm seeing more of these Indigenous issues going on and on. I am scared for future generations. Whether we adopt or go the surrogate route, I'm really scared for them. But I like your message about trying your best to just educate them, and teaching them the best that we know, because really that's all we can do, because with the tools that we have. Um, so yeah, definitely when it comes to that aspect, I definitely want to be a father one day, but yeah, that's kind of where I am at with that.
That's awesome. Well, I think, you have two uncles who are husbands. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of nieces and nephews to adopt. So I'm not too worried about you becoming a parent then. Yeah. And is your husband status?
Yes, he is. He's Métis. He's Alberta Métis. So his band is up in northern Alberta in the Peavine area.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah, so if he's Métis, that'll be a lot easier. We've actually haven't applied for my daughter's status because I'm a federal like jurisdiction. I was red flagged at the hospital,
Oh,
and so I'm really afraid of my grandchildren being red flagged at the hospital if she were to have children. That's just where we're at. And I know that we're trying to pretend like the laws are changing, but they're not. We're being policed by nurses, doctors, all the time. In fact, I had a really awful experience getting my daughter's shot because the nurse obviously didn't think that she should have been there. And she made that incredibly clear, not just in front of me, but in front of her. And so that was super shitty. And
yeah,
yeah, and that's my daughter very rarely has any interaction with medical because they're racist. There's not a nice way to say it. They're just racist. So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. And then we just recently did that podcast with with the Ashleys. So Corey Ashley lost his wife Lillian at Christmas
Oh,
because of medical neglect in Hannah, Alberta. And so I don't know what the right answer is, like how we can doctor our own. Like Dr. James McCocus can't be the only doctor I run to.
yeah, no,
Like if an emergency happens, I need to be able to trust the system, and I can't.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really, I wanted some severe systemic changes happening so that the next generations don't feel that. And
Yeah.
so I don't know what the right answers are, but maybe we can, find some good solutions there. And if you get elected, of course I would, help you in any way I could. That's for certain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a relationship with any of the treaty chiefs here?
No, I don't currently. I mean, like currently, because I'm with me running, I've kind of like I kind of am leaning to going in 2023, but I'm kind of thinking it might be later too in the next one after that. I'm right now, I think I'm just trying to build a resume, I guess, if you will, build a name for myself. Um, so currently, no, I would love to reach out to some of those people. I mean, I talk to elders in my band, but of course that's like I said, that's in Ontario, and I'm actually helping a candidate run in our Indigenous election here in July. So I'm working on that too. But yeah, I would definitely love to reach out to some people here in Calgary and in Alberta and have those conversations. I mean, I have talked to some elders through my husband, but not about my politics. So I do know of elders here in Alberta. I just haven't like sat down with um, anybody with my politic journey in
Mhm.
Alberta, anyways. So
Have you considered running for school trustee or city council for the upcoming municipal election?
I have, but I don't know if it'll be this election. I know that actually you and I actually had those conversations. I think just with my master's going to be starting up here in a couple of months, I just think that this year I want to just sort of get myself grounded on that journey. But I definitely would be willing to look at running in that direction too. I've actually had people not just I've had actual people from my team and even friends and stuff have come to me and said, Rio, you should really look at trying municipal too. So, and even people I've just, met on Twitter in the last little while too have said that to me. So it's good that I have the support behind me and I have people who are like, saying I should do it and sort of like my little cheerleaders, I guess, if you will, on the side. But yeah, I would definitely consider that too. I mean, I know it's going to probably take a lot of times for me to run. I already know that, running as independent, I'm up against the big party machines. I mean, ironically, that's something I heard somebody on the news say once to an independent candidate, but I feel the same way that, running against all the parties, they've got all the resources and stuff like that. Independent, you don't really have that resource, so you sort of have to rely that your networking and the connections that you make.
Yeah, that's why I encourage you to consider running municipally because, you know, like I can tell you, it takes like, 4 or 5 times to run to win. And like I can think of someone like Andre Chabot, who's, ran exclusively in like blue circles and has always been, the hang around when it comes to conservative politics. But even municipally, he still has to work really hard and run and run and run and run in order to win.
Yeah,
So building up that resume, that portfolio, like it takes so much and so many elections that you have to, just put on that crazy glue on that wound and keep going because
yeah.
yeah, there's no stopping, right? And no time for reflection. And even for me, there's a piece of me that's like, maybe I should put my name in, maybe I should put my name in, but I actually can't this go around. And I think that's the actual barriers for Indigenous people that non-Indigenous don't face is that you know the stability is so different and they can't even comprehend it, right? So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And I
Yes.
I don't know what the future looks like for me at this point. And I think that again is a difference between Indigenous and Canadians that, we have to survive and they get to thrive,
Yeah.
and at our expense. So, that's just kind of where I'm at with my political journey. But I want to see you. I want to see Marilyn. I want to see, Chevy Rabbit obviously is somebody who's really interested in politics and conservative leaning, but obviously an Indigenous queer, someone who should definitely be at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And that's why I'm excited to really put myself out there. And, my biggest thing too is, because I've been even asked this too by people in general, and even people on my team is, if I lose, is that
No,
the end?
you will lose. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I love
no,
you to pieces, but you're going to lose.
yeah.
But you
And
have to keep going. Like you have to run and run and run and run.
well, and that's what I mean. Like when I've been asked that, is it they're more like, is that the end of the road for you? And I want to remind people. I mean, regardless of the amount of times that I will lose, I'm going to continue to keep my voice going, because the thing is that I think the more we raise our voices, even if we do not get elected, the more we raise our voices, eventually somebody is going to listen, or at least that's my hope, is eventually somebody is going to listen. And it may take years, it may take decades for somebody to listen, but I mean, I don't see a purpose of losing and then, okay, that's it, keep my mouth quiet, because that's not the type of person I am. I'm a very vocal person, especially when I'm passionate about something. I am going to use my voice as much as possible.
I think that's the best reason to run, is to give that voice a platform. It may not mean success in the votes, but at least you got the voice out. And I think, especially Canadians, they claim they care about political dialogue, right? So it's really important that your voice is there, and it's really important that you keep running and keep running. If you can do it, because it needs to be done. That's I think the best constructive activism that we can do in a climate, especially this climate right now, where we're dying
Yeah,
disproportionately than anyone else, because we refuse to address systemic racism. So, I want you to know you're welcome on my show anytime to talk about anything. And definitely as move forward with your platforms and your voice, and if there are issues you want to discuss as it comes up, please feel free to come back on my show, and
absolutely.
we'll discuss them. So I'm proud that this podcast has given solutions and included cultural safety and cultural first aid in almost all of them, to create a safer space for Indigenous, people of color, queer, those with disabilities. Thank you to authors Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin of heretohelp.bc.ca. They put out a piece called "What is Indigenous Cultural Safety and Why I Should Care About It?" Their work are the cultural tools that I have said over 100 times in my podcast. So please support Indigenous work as part of your work on reconciliation and settler understandings. I'm lucky enough to repeat and highlight them here. Internalized racism or lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized folks face in a structure of racism. You can go to racialequitytools.org. What is Internalized Racism by Donna Bevins to learn more. There's do's and don'ts for bystander intervention at American Friends Service Committee. If you see or experience racism in Alberta, report it to ACT to End Racism or text at 587-506-3838. Indigenous have been talking about the issue, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, and public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded no more. Honor our words, honor the treaties, listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize marginalized with their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they're cutting violence prevention programs and services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay-straight alliances, lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities, know that your vote to that party directly negatively impacts marginalized people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform, the violence prevention programs, now 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Denying all of these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the justice, educational, and health institutions, with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have zero business running. It should be understood by all politicians, community associations, sports clubs, etc. A really great article is Truth Before Truth, How Non-Indigenous Canadians Become Allies. Google it. If you are experiencing emotional distress after anything we talked about today and want to talk, the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310 is toll-free, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They also have a texting option at hopeforwellness.ca. If related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can call 844-413-6649. It's national, toll-free, 24/7 crisis information. And for non-Indigenous, there are distress centers in your area with a functioning 211, and you can call 833-5 or 456-4566 through 833-456-4566. If you need more assistance. And if you see or experience racism in Alberta, again, act to end racism or text 587-506-3838. I also want to say a huge shout out to the Trevor Project. They do a lot of resources for LGBTQ2+ youth. I myself used Kids Help Phone when I was young at 1-800-668-6868, and lifevoice.ca has lots of crisis supports and LGBTQ2+ crisis supports. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. That's why I started this podcast, to speak freely, without interruption, without tone police, without leadership shaming, without gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure want to tell us theirs by people who are ignorant, who know nothing about Indigenous colonialism, the constant surveillance of our people, our protests, our vigil, and our rights. Typical microaggressions, people dealing with internalized racism and become gatekeepers. Internal and external racism is an everyday reality for Indigenous people. I want to say thank you to my ancestors, my granny and my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian roots, and stepping up and teaching me to be a proud Calgarian. It is through her I am a second-generation proud Calgarian. Thank you to my husband for editing and producing this show. He's been my childhood friend, father of our child, support down my journey of the Red Road, and has witnessed decades of racism and sexism. And to our child, who we are blessed to learn from daily, we are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. I hope my daughter and my family will be proud in the future of us trying to discuss these issues. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to my previous donors for already showing the support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I also have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And to those Calgary rabbits, you're lucky I'm not your dish. My beautiful cousin would respond, or you'd be in my dish. Thank you for listening.